Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last session for today. We are doing a technical and governance talk, and it will feature two different talks. Talk one will be on enhancing DNS resilience with AIORI-IMN, Internet Measurement Insights for DNS Edge Deployments. And talk two will be on the ICP2 review, what it is and how to participate and provide your feedback. So let's now welcome our first speaker on stage, Mr. Anand Raj from India Internet Foundation.
Hello, everyone. This is the last session. I will be presenting a community-led initiative. We name it Advanced Internet Operations Research in India, which is right now supported by Government of India, NICSI, with the prime objective of measuring the DNS and Internet protocol parameters for regional resilience, trustworthiness, security, and also work on multiple research initiatives for the evolution of Internet regionally as well as globally in a standard way. Now the next slide. Yeah. Before we go into the technical details, there is something that I would like to explore about is the evolution. We have started in around 2011 with some outreach and capacity building programs with the support of ISOC, APNIC, ICANN trainers, government and other stakeholders. And we have reached out to the community, understanding their problem statements. And then we have identified some of the problem statements in 2014 around. We have established India's first L-root instance. And then one of the exchange points to understand the routing and peering infrastructure in India. And also at the particular regional point of view in Kolkata. We have seen whenever we have implemented L-root server, everybody was talking about it needs a 2 Mbps link because there will be no very less root server resolution that will happen. But actually it was crossing 20 Mbps and 30 Mbps. And with the help of ISPs and other stakeholders, we have increased it. We have seen that lots of queries that were actually resolving in Singapore and other places will get resolved in Kolkata. Then there was a Vardha cyclone that happened, and because of that cyclone, there are lots of services discontinuity we have seen. There are problem statements we have faced. And then with the ISPs, we have started working on some of the IXs, Kolkata IX we have gone through, we have established. And then for the security aspect of that, we have made it manners compliant. Then we have seen that there are lots of things that we need to measure in order to evolve research on multifold various aspects of internet. And we have we have seen that there are no measurement platform that was available at that time in India. RIPE Atlas was there. We have communicated with RIPE Atlas so that we could have thousands of probes in India, but the communication didn't work. Then we have approached to government, and in 2019, we have been granted a project, Advanced Internet Operations Research in India. The idea was to have a measurement platform, a test bed, and try to mingle with the community, the academic community, the research community, so that we can work on multitude of problem statements. We have engaged with the community last year, 2024, with this platform. We have delivered some solutions, and right now, after this, in 2025, we are delivering tangible solutions for the stakeholders to understand, optimize, and then also on the research part of it. One of that I'm just showcasing over here. May I have the next slide? So while we were architecturing this particular platform, the idea was not to have a measurement platform in place, but also it should work on multitude of activities. The first thing is it is a measurement platform, interoperable, and like RIPE Atlas and other measurement platforms, there is a problem statement. If you wanted to do a complex measurement, it takes time. Or if you wanted to add new measurements, it takes time. But here it's a plug and play facility. The community, if they wanted to do some complex measurement, they can actually build that measurement in our CI/CD pipeline, and it can easily be done. And we have demonstrated that in IETF 122 hackathon this time. It is an internet standards development platform. We are actually provisioning virtual machines and eBPF enabled. They can actually work on these standard development platforms and test and troubleshoot new standards like DNS DELIG we are working on, kind of post-quantum cryptography DNS. We are working on a test bed with the research community out there in India. We are working on open source projects on the critical internet resources like names and numbers, like RPKI and new DNS artifacts. It's a reference architecture also. I'll just showcase some of the reference architectures that we have built, and it is kind of getting used by the ISPs, IXPs, and other partners. We are also working on having data repository for the research community. And nevertheless, we have established a capacity building program in India. We call it AIORI-IMN, and the second edition is kind of being done in 2025, where we have a 2 months of hackathon, and then these winners are actually going for IETF hackathons, and they work with the global community. May I have the next slide? So as a physical infrastructure, we have Anycast test beds. We have in the 5 locations in India. Currently, this year, we will be planning to have 10 more locations. These Anycast test beds are there in academic institutions. They are making use of this in instances. They are building a private cloud where we can actually provision virtual machines, and people can work on that. Next. The second part of this infrastructure is we have Raspberry Pis and virtual machines which are there across India. And these are working as leaf nodes in a distributed communication architecture, where we have clients and servers both can be provisioned in the Anycast infrastructure as well as these Raspberry Pis, and which is actually giving us a lot more space to play and do an end-to-end measurement where the payloads and the metadata are encrypted. May I have the next slide? So these are some of the measurements that we are going through. We are publishing measurement reports for the stakeholders in India, and they are in turn implementing the problem statements and trying to understand what are the problem statements. May I have the next slide? This is something we have simulated one of the problem statements, kind of trying to understand the attack traffic and normal traffic. It was developed in Standards Hackathon 2024. So there are lots of services we are deploying in this architecture, and the students and faculties are working on these artifacts so that they could actually understand what is happening over there. May I have the next slide? Like this is something which has been done in IETF 122, the RFC 8250, which is kind of gauging the server latency as well as the network latency. We have implemented that in some of the DNS servers like NSD, Bind, Unbound, Power DNS. And we have implemented PDM in those servers in Anycast instances. And we have tried to understand that at the time of attack or at the time of normal traffic, how the network is behaving and how the server is behaving. And we could actually differentiate between the network behavior and the server behavior. And we have implemented this measurement in our measurement platform. So in that way, we have showcased how a new RFC or a new kind of standard can be implemented flawlessly using this measurement platform. Now the next slide. This is something which is again giving a kind of measurement that we are doing. We have had like lots of places where we have measurement devices, the Raspberry Pis. We are summarizing that and we're trying to understand how this L root server measurement, if we do a SOA measurement and how it actually oscillates. In that way, we have a longitudinal data of all the root servers that are present in India and trying to understand that what kind of the presence of root servers and what are the quality parameters over there. Now we have seen that whenever we are going for a root server or any kind of services like the root server, we can't find that which root server it is going, whether it is from Singapore root server or the Kolkata root server. So there we are using host name, and the host name is not standardized. Every root server has its own way to give its host name. We have compiled that and we are trying to get into that which root server is responding to which particular measurement anchor. In that way, there's an RSSEC which says that 13 out of 8 root servers, a key out of n model, and we are trying to understand that where these root servers are fulfilling that particular model. We have the next slide. This is something, a use case wherein we are just measuring, a particular A record of a .in service from a distance location in Guwahati. May I have the next slide? That particular measurement is kind of whenever we go to a portal, this particular platform is also having a portal which could be used by the researchers in order to measure. This is kind of giving that particular root zone availability whenever that particular recursive server fires a query to a .in A record, a particular wave service record. So this is a root server latency that we get. May I have the next slide? This is a CCTLD latency. Next slide. This is the authoritative server latency. So in that way, a particular, the holistic way of understanding which DNS artifact and the hierarchy is giving more latency, more problematic, and where we need to place this particular DNS artifacts across India, which is kind of a deterrent in the DNS resolution. It may be the root servers, it may be the CCTLD servers, it may be the authoritative zones that may not responding, or some of the servers are not responding. So this is how this particular measurement platform is trying to understand the operational behavior of critical internet infrastructure in the region. Have the next slide. Now I'll talk about one thing that we have developed using this platform, an HDNS solution. Why it was needed? Because with the community consultation, we have seen that there are lots of things that need to be taken care of whenever we are trying to, let's say, think about what will happen 10 years down the line. I was going through many discussions about the BCPs in the previous session. We were trying to understand how these things to be given a reference architecture, so that if anybody wish to implement that, we could provide them the infrastructure, the reference architecture, and then we can evolve using community. And the same way, there could be a maturity model in place so that the BCP could be, and other things could be implemented. So there are 3 or 4 things that was in our mind, that it should be ultra low latency, less than 20 ms it should serve the AR/VR. It should work on the localized resilience and prevent single point outage. Regional resilience is something we are also working upon. It should be dynamic, workload aware routing for 5G and other telecommunication norms. And at least it should reduce the backhaul bandwidth. May I have the next slide? This is the component of, it's a diagram of high-level architecture that we are in place for the measurement. We have the Anycast servers, which is also having the anchor points. And then these distributed anchor points are having those DNS artifacts positioned there. It could be in the Anika servers as well as at the anchor points. The idea was to have these DNS at the exchange points also, so that the ISPs could work upon that. It could be inside the ISP, and also it could be inside the home. So that there are lots of things that, lots of places wherein this particular reference architecture could work. And we have tried to solve a particular problem wherein the local DNS resolution and the global DNS resolution, we can understand that in a decade timeline, there are lots of local resolutions that will happen in smart homes. And most of the autonomous vehicles and other things, whenever they will start with, we have tried to understand that these problem statements will be there and work on a reference architecture. May I have the next slide? This is a layered one architecture. We have the management and analytics layer. We have a controller layer which controls everything. And then we have the provisional layer which are working as a worker. This is something which is divided in that particular architecture. And these worker layers are having those DNS endpoints and other things that we could have. The controller layer is there, and that is completely distributed. The communication architecture follows two principles. The one is we need feedback-based architecture, because some are controls and some are for analytics and data. We use fire and forget architecture. That means you fire and you forget, so that we could scale the infrastructure. May I have the next slide? This is something which is kind of giving the communication architecture flow. In one way, we have a distributed communication architecture pub-sub model, and it is interfacing with the REST APIs, which is exposing the APIs. Each component in this architecture is cohesive. They are having a zero trust with each component with each other, so that we could have a security by design principle embedded in the architecture. And if any of the partners and any of the entities wants to have their own setup for a particular component, it could actually work efficiently. And if you wanted to interoperate with other architecture, other solutions, it could easily be done. May I have the next slide? This is the task execution flow. I think the presentation will be there, so I am not going through it because of the opacity of the time. How we are managing the task execution flow inside the architecture. May I have the next slide? So at the heart, it's all microservices. We are using Docker, Kubernetes K8 to orchestrate the whole platform. And then we have API gateways which are kind of interfacing the portal, the user portal, the management portal, and the third-party integrations. So in any of the microservices, it happens, it is orchestrated automatically, it spawns, it has its own life cycle management. May I have the next slide? This is the task scheduling algorithm that we are using at each and every anchors over there. So a task can be in the queue, waiting, running, error, force stop, and finished. So whenever we have designed it, it could be, there could be instances wherein it could be, there are possibilities of hacking, there are possibilities of misuse of it. Each and every task, each and every queue is monitored. And whenever we push a task into the flow, into the architecture, it goes into this particular cycle. And we can easily understand that if, let's say, if this Raspberry Pi or this particular device is having this capacity, 60% capacity will always be utilized. And if it is utilized, it will be in the queue. And then it will wait for its execution. So for the measurement tasks to go into execution, we are having defined flows, and we in the controller we can see that which task is at which scale, and the overall capacity, how much it is utilized, so that there should not be any DDoS attacks. There should not be overutilization of the capacity. May I have the next slide? This is the component architecture of the DNS edge deployment that we have done. We have three DNS, we have DNS pods, which are having microservices, and we have hyperlocal route, the local zones over there, and management, monitoring, and filtering capabilities in different microservices in one node. That node is there. As an IX, we are using FRR and BERT so that it could directly interface with an IX inside an ISP, as well as it could be there implemented in the Raspberry Pis itself, so that there could be some level of parental control we can working upon. We are also working on a mobile app with this, where we could use this mobile app to have a parental control on DNS at that particular level, which is it is a privacy sensitive, and that's why it will not go beyond that. So these kind of filtering and mechanisms we are putting in place so that we could build kind of a DNS infrastructure which is resilient, which gives us good performance and secured by design. May I have the next slide? These are some of the matrices that we are getting from the right now 2 or 3 places it is running. We are getting the matrices, we are tweaking the architecture, we are working with the community, and it is kind of getting into the production. May I have the next slide? These are the comparative matrices of power DNS, not DNS, and unbound. Again, we are using the same PDM also to understand the server latency as well as the network latency, what are the problem statements over there. So think of it, a measurement platform which is spun into a reference architecture, and then these DNS artifacts are there, which is kind of giving us measurement data. So in a way, a platform which is doing a holistic effort towards building a resilient critical internet infrastructure in the region. We are also working on some of the regional resilience aspects for names and numbers, working on the dual signatures that are there in the DNS as part of RFCs. Also, kind of from numbers point of view, NIR TALs, so that we could have better regional resilience from trustworthiness aspects. May I have the next slide? So this is something which is gives an overview of how these Anycast instances are demographically positioned, working as a CDNs. Next slide. This is the control plane. And we are using nats.io right now. We have worked with MQTT for distributed communication model, but that was not giving us results because we wanted to have a fire and forget communication architecture, and nats.io is giving us that throughput. May I have the next slide? So whenever we were developing this kind of measurement platform, there were questions of whether you will get a community which will work on this, because measurement platforms are kind of there, but if there is no thriving community who works on this, it will not be used. In 2024, we have gone to places across India, 5 or 6 places, done workshop with the faculties and students. And then we have done hackathons. 23 teams came together. And these DNS artifacts that I was talking about are come out of some of the hackathon problem statements that we have there. We have given to them. They have worked with us for 2 to 3 to 4 months. And may I have the next slide? And you can see the team over there working in IETF 122, presenting some of the solutions that they have developed. In 2025 also, we are working on a larger scale where we will reach out to around thousands of students and faculties. We have defined problem statements right now, which we wanted to incorporate, build upon, and we wish mentors from across the globe which could actually collaborate with the team. And if you have some problem statements also, we have a platform which could work, which could actually deploy those artifacts, your solutions, and you can get results out of that. With that, I'll stop here if there is any questions. Thank you.
Any questions in the room? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Anand.
Thank you.
And now let's welcome our second speaker on stage, Ms. Joyce Chen, our Senior Advisor, Strategic Engagement at APNIC.
Hi, everyone, and thanks very much for hanging in there for the entire day and being with us at the last session. I think I won't go into too much detail. I'd like to just let us go early. And anyway, there are future participation possibilities and opportunities as well. So I'll just breeze through this very, very fast. And then if we have no questions, we can all go and have nice drinks before dinner. Next slide. So today we're going to talk about ICP2 review. Next slide. And essentially what it refers to is the Internet Coordination Policy 2. There is ICP1 and ICP3, etc., but they are talking about different things altogether. ICP2 is itself its own document. It was put together in 2001, and what it does is provide criteria for recognizing new RIRs at that point in time. Next slide. So as you can see, ICP2, the document itself, is nearly 25 years old. I believe it's 24 years old, so not quite yet 25. But a lot of changes have occurred in the internet today, and we can't take the RIR ecosystem for granted anymore. And so there was a decision to look at the ICP2 document to see if there was a need for a review and to update it so that it would reflect better current realities. So as you can see, need to more explicitly provide for the RIR's ongoing responsibilities and also to include a section that looks at the potential derecognition of an RIR should it not be providing the services that it is meant to. Next slide. This is the ICP2 timeline in terms of its history and when the RIRs were established. So as you can see, some of the RIRs were already established before ICP2 was adopted. And after ICP2 was adopted, then LACNIC and APNIC were established based on ICP2. Next slide. This is just to say that about 2 years ago, the NRO Executive Council asked the ASOAC to help look at strengthening the RIR system with 2 tasks. One was the ICP2 implementation procedures, and the other was to strengthen the document itself. Next slide. I don't think we need to have a recap of the ASO in ICANN because this crowd, I think, already knows very well. But just very quickly, the ASO stands for the Address Supporting Organization, and what it does is advise on internet number resources policies within the ICANN space. And what it does is it advises the ICANN board, oversees the global level policy development process because each of the RIRs have our own respective regional policy development processes for allocation of number of resources. So the ASO is looking at those policies at the global level. And part of his job as well is to appoint 2 members to the ICANN board, seats 9 and 10, as well as 1 member to the ICANN NOMCOM. Next slide. These are our ASOAC members, and I have highlighted for you in case you don't recognize them. The ones who we have appointed from the Asia Pacific region. We have our very dear friend Akinori-san, who is with us today. Thank you for your work. And also, if you have questions, we are here to answer them about this process. Next slide. This is just to say that the process for the review itself started last year. And it started with a document containing core principles that we wanted the community to look at that would go into the actual revised draft document. So this was, think of it as a precursor to the work that is being done to revise the ICP2 document. And where we are now is that the ASOAC has published this revised draft RIR governance document, and you will be looking at it in the next few slides. Next slide. Again, this is just a timeline of the process and where we are. We are currently in the open public consultation period, and that is why we are doing a lot of engagement regarding this topic. After the public comment, there will be a final review based on community feedback, and then an approval and adoption process with ICANN. Next slide. This is talking about that process that took place last year, at the end of last year, where we looked at the core principles and we had the consultation. Received quite a good number of responses, both in the ICANN public comment as well as the RIR's own questionnaire. Next slide. Next slide. And some of the impact of that community feedback was actually very useful to help to conceptualize and to actually put in the straw man for what would be the revised draft governance document. Because first of all, there was a lot of feedback regarding the need to have a clarified role of the community to address some of those procedural concerns about the recognition and derecognition procedures. It aligned the requirements for common privacy and corporate governance requirements, and it also elaborated where there might be some questions about the principles and how those would to be addressed. And so those, the feedback that we received from the community for the core principles really helped to shape how we would look at the revision of the draft governance document. Next slide. And finally, the actual revised draft RIR governance document, the full title. So ICP2 is no longer the title that we'd like to take moving forward. We're actually going to call it the governance document for the recognition, maintenance, and derecognition of the RIRs. So it is a long title, probably impossible to make an acronym. Don't even want to try. You can try, but know that it is meant to really tell you what this document is for, as opposed to you see ICP2 and then you still have to find out which number it is and what it is meant to do. So next slide. Of course, the title of this document is also open for community feedback. If you really hate it, let us know. Next slide. Okay, so what is this document actually looking at now? It's going to look at clarifying the scope and lifecycle management of the RIRs. It will look to formalize governance structures and processes, hopefully strengthen operational requirements, as well as to clarify all the actors that are part of the governance processes. Next slide. So in the scope and lifecycle management, as you can see in the gray text, that's the original, what was in the original document, which really looked at only the criteria for establishing new RIRs. In the revised draft this time round, it does a lot more. It is about recognition, maintenance of the RIRs, and derecognition, and all those criteria and procedures and processes that will go into that. So this document is much more expanded from the original ICP2 document, and therefore I do encourage you, if you're curious to know more about this, to go and actually have a look and read the document, because it's meant to put the governance processes in place for some of these actions to occur. Next slide. There's also the formalization of governance structures. In the original document, it only outlined principles like neutrality, impartiality, bottom-up policy development, but it did not actually have any process or kind of a structure that would help us to look at RIR governance. So again, the draft document is trying to now address this. First of all, we're looking at member-controlled governance. That a majority of an RIR's governing body must be elected by its members. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm not sure, but have a look. As well as corporate governance. So we talk a lot about, for example, auditing as part of good health of the RIRs, which was not explicit in the original document, but will now become a new requirement. So again, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that this is a good idea to have as part of good multi-stakeholder practices? And then finally, anti-capture measures, which requires RIRs to implement controls to prevent any single entity or group from having undue influence over an RIR. So there have been some extenuating circumstances that led us to this point for why we're revising ICP2. I won't go into detail about it right now, but you can come to me or even AIORI or people in the room privately to chat about what is the larger background towards pushing us to have a revised document. Next slide. Strengthen operational requirements. The original document only looked at technical capability. So basically, can you run this RIR or can you not run this RIR? And if it looks like you can run the RIR, sure, we'll give it to you. Like you can just do it. Of course, these days, we're much more professional, I hope. We're a proper organization, and therefore there are also certain operational requirements we should be expected to meet. And this is all part of the accountability, the transparency of the process that we all have to go through. Next slide. I believe this is the last point, and this is really looking at clarifying the roles, responsibilities, and the procedures. The original document only had very general guidelines. If you read it, it's very, very kind of top-level, high-level language, but it does not really talk explicitly about what are the expectations for certain actors in the governance processes that are being put in place in this document. So this document now, the revised version, will clearly delineate the responsibilities of various actors, such as the RRRs, obviously. ICANN also plays like a big role now in this document where it was kind of implicit before. And then as well, laying out all those procedures, approval thresholds that would be needed for if, for example, somebody wanted to establish a new RIR. So I encourage you to go into the document and look at those, because perhaps you may support or not support having the requirement or the threshold that all RIRs must agree to the proposal before it gets pushed up. Maybe you disagree, maybe you think the threshold is too high. Let us know, we'd like to know. Next slide. So these are the consultation and participation opportunities that are happening. The consultation period has already opened since 14 April, and it will close very soon on the 27th of May. So if you have any questions or feedback or comments, there is not a lot of time left to do so. So I do encourage you to quickly look into this and see if there's something that interests you. Next slide. This is just guidelines for guidance for feedback. I think the most important point is the very last point, which is that we appreciate having constructive comments. We really want to look at how to improve and strengthen the RIR system, and we'd like you to tell us how to do that. So we're not really looking at kind of overall remarks about the RIR system and whether you think it's a good idea in the first place. That's not what the governance document is trying to cover. But so please keep your feedback constructive. And as well, we are not looking at implementation of the RIR criteria. Those will be considered out of scope as well, but they will be addressed after this governance document has been settled. Next slide. As I've said before, there's currently an open ICANN public comment until the 27th of May, and you can also go there and put your feedback. Next slide. Next slide. And for the APNIC region and for the APNIC community, you are very welcome to sign up for our mailing list on the APNIC Orbit mailing list, as well as to attend one of our webinars. We have two. One has already passed on the 30th of April, and there's a recording for that if you want to go back and review. But there's another one coming up, which is very soon, 15th of May, so do register for it. You can find all this information on the website. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes, Alvin, go ahead. Please make it an easy one. We all want to go home.
I'm just really wondering why, we have the ICP 1, 2, and 3 is kind of denote this is like important internet document, but there must be a reason why we don't want to ditch the ICP 2 and replace it with a long name that no one can remember, and then we just refer to, that our governance document. What's the reason for doing that?
I invite Akinori to come up and explain some of the thinking that ASO has done extensively on this issue, I'm very sure. You want to come up here? Yeah, maybe this is easier.
Right. ICP document series is not really, we have just a few ICP documents, which is a really fundamental of our institutionalization of the coordination of the internet, global internet infrastructure. So that is really, I guess we didn't think about the frequent modification and the revision on that kind of document. So that is the reason why ICP2 is just 3, and then we don't have any, less than, we don't have the more than handful, or, some other document is not really needed. So 25 years is, but still really long. And then the total, the 25 years change the total, the internet to the totally different thing then that we need to fix. So that's right now that we are, the reason why we are doing the revision of it. And then that's, I'm answering your question.
Why did we change the name from ICP2?
Okay, the
So
most
can I,
important part. sorry.
Akinor-san, can I add something to that maybe?
Sure,
So
please.
speaking so James Galvin, ICANN board, I think maybe, I hope I'm not adding more confusion to this, but I can tell you that my understanding and expectation is it's not that we're changing the name. ICP2 is just a label to the document. And this document is going to replace ICP2. It's going to become the new ICP2. That's what I think is going on. Do you have a different perception of all of this?
Okay, my answer would be that,
Yeah.
the most important part we need a change of the title is the current ICP2 title just mentioning about the recognition. But
Yeah.
we right now implementing the potential derecognition, then the continuity of the operational quality. So the concept of the document is totally, upgraded to to include the whole life cycle. So that is the reason why we need a renaming. No,
Okay, yeah, so I guess for me, so as I'm understanding what you're saying, yes, I do understand the title is going to change, but ICP2 is still just a label. So, I mean, there are, certain number of ICP2 documents, and yeah, the label change, the title change makes sense because the content is greater in scope and covering more issues, and that's what's going on. But we're not going to lose the ICP2 label. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Edmund here, actually, in a bit of a relation to this, and then I have another question. But I'm guessing that the process itself is still considered to go through the ICANN board for a kind of acceptance or acknowledgement to be put in place. Is that the general concept? And this is something that is coming up conceptually, at least from the ASO, as a governance structure point of view.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now my question, I first of all, I think there's great progress and I think it's looking very good. One thing though, I'm a little bit concerned with, if I heard you correctly, you talked about the initiation or rejection of an RIR requiring a unanimous approval from all RIRs. That is a bit concerning, but because if there is a particular RIR that is becoming problematic, apparently that RIR might not approve. Then what does that mean? That still causes an issue that doesn't resolve what hopefully this process was set up to try to resolve. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly.
No, thank you very much. So that is actually the FAQ. Then why we need a unanimity to decide the new RIL, and then particularly the new RIL means the what I say, they are separating the portion of the RIL service region to establish the new RIL. So that's basically that it may be perceived as the natural conflict of the interest that remain there, but the concept is that to five RIL, and the all RILs need to the serve entire globe collectively. Therefore, that we need to be that really concerted understanding of the distribution of the responsibility, and then collectively serve to the global internet. So that is the reason why we need unanimity for this. So still, it is a little bit maybe vague or some sort of this.
Yeah. So I think for initiation, I can totally understand.
Yeah.
But for I forgot what the word is, but the derecognition. But for the derecognition of an RIR, then that becomes a problem. And I recall my participation, at least on the root server governance system. There was a big discussion about what if a particular root server operator becomes problematic or is not performing. Then obviously there needs to be a threshold to replace a particular root server operator. This seems to be a similar situation. But if we require a problematic RIR to give the approval for their to me to be problematic, at least, because if I'm problematic, of course I will not get myself derecognized, right?
Maybe, okay. It's
I'm
yeah,
just clarifying,
not-
happy to put it in the comments, but I just want to clarify that is the current proposal, and that this is one of the I guess the issues that come to mind.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't really have the really clearest word to answer your question. And then, again, the all RIL, currently 5 RILs, collectively responsible for the serving the globe, then any RIL doesn't want to lose one RIL and replace it in alternative the operators. It is very hard. That's the reason why we put the emphasis on the potential. That's it's hypothetical. Hypothetically, if we need to redelegate, recognize one RIL, then that hypothesis brought us the concept of the remedy bias, which is try very hard to revitalize and normalize the concerned RIL. So that kind of concept is brought birth from the concept of the potential derecognition. So that is one other way you can put it, put an understanding on this concept. And then 5 RIL to collectively serve the globe, and 13 root servers to serve the root DNS zone. Is a little bit different, concept. So that's a quite. I would say it's a similar in terms of the really fundamental function. Serving to the internet community, that's a very similarity. But number 5 and 13, and then what I say, the coverage coverage by 5 for the entire globe, and then 13 for the redundancies are quite different concept for me. Thanks.
Thanks very much for the question, Edmund. I admittedly had to go back and actually read the document to be able to respond to you. But the language does say that the unanimity for derecognizing RIRs is only for those RIRs that are, it basically excludes the RIR that is in consideration for derecognition. So the unanimity refers to the rest of the other RIRs that are not being derecognized. So yeah, so just to clarify, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Akinori. Actually,
Oh,
we still have a few minutes if you're.
yes, Manju has a question or?
Oh, sure, Manju,
Yes.
please go ahead.
So my question is, so it was called ICP2 and the P stands for policy. When you change the name to something paper, does that mean it's no longer a policy?
So again, this is from perhaps my poor understanding of what my comms people have been trying to drill into me, is that the view is, and of course I'm not speaking on behalf of the ASOAC, this is just my understanding. The view is that this is a governance document. It is not itself a policy. And so the processes that we're going through right now doesn't qualify technically as a policy development process. It's quite different. And I think that was a bit of the thinking behind why we decided to, and again, I'm not clear if we're actually dropping the label ICP2 or we're retaining the label but keeping the title, or we're actually renaming the whole document. But if you read the document, that is what it says, is that the new title of this document is governance document, blah, 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 right? But that was my understanding, is that it is not it is not actually a policy in the way that we understand it traditionally, like an ICANN policy. And that's why we renamed it, so that it will be much clearer what this document is trying to do. It is a governance document. It is not a policy per se. Again, I might be wrong. Happy to be corrected.
So I have a follow-up question just real quick. So if it's not a policy, does that mean it doesn't have to go through? Because we were saying it has to go through the kind of like the PD process, which is like you're endorsed by the whole SO and then you have to go through the ICANN board. Does that mean it doesn't have to go through the ICANN board anymore, or does it have to? And also, so if this, whatever is it, not policy or paper, that's, you know, now it's like recognized by the ICANN board. So in the future, whatever it's in that paper, for example, recognizing or derecognizing RIRs, does that still go through the whole ICANN process? So if, for example, the RIRs are unanimously agree to derecognize or recognize an RIR, it goes to ICANN, and for example, any AC in the ICANN community, should it be GAG, for RSAC, ASAC, you know, give an advice to the ICANN board saying, oh, this is, you know, deeply compromising ICANN's interests or like global public interest. Does ICANN board have the authority to, you know, just reject this ASO decision? That's my follow-up question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to try to answer that question. That's not happening. But I think what occurs to me as we're talking about this, I want to be careful that, or suggest that we don't try to overthink the use of the word policy. Okay. It is a governance document. The ICANN board has approved all of the ICP documents. I mean, there's only 4 of them. They are, you know, agreed to by the board, and, you know, passed by resolution. So they become, you know, is it a policy document? Is a governing document a policy document? I mean, I would think so in general terms. These are just the, you know, the rules and the guidance by which, you know, ICANN and the board and the principles by which they stand and what they're going to do. Now, the formality of the details of how they apply and how it gets there, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not a lawyer, and I'll let somebody else figure all of that out. I mean, you know, think about what's going on now. I mean, the ASO, this was handed off to the ASO and said, you know, hey, let's do this. And so it's going on in that community and they're doing it. Now, obviously, each of the ASOs have their own policy processes, but they're getting together under the auspices of the ICANN arena doing their policy. Even on the other side, I know that, these folks here are used to thinking about policy in terms of the GNSO. It has its own policy development process that applies to GTLDs. And, there's a certain amount of formality that goes with all of that. And the board agrees to it and said, yes, let's do it. And, then it's done. We don't ask, the GNSO doesn't ask the ASO for its opinion on its policies, So, let's try not to get too tied up in being too specific. Surely there's some formality there, but it's a principled document that will be approved by the board, and then ICANN as an organization will implement some kind of enforcement of that. But I think that's also part of the discussion going on in the ASO, what enforcement really looks like and compliance and such. So, there's still details to be worked out. I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, for that. And then one of the points is the policy in this context is that, supporting organizations in the ICANN is, making a recommendation to the board about the handling of the resources by the IANA, right? Then this time the revision of the ISP is that basically not the responsibility and the mandate of the ASO as this context. So it's quite out of the scope of the ASO as a supporting organization. But our IL scheme, we need to be responsible for that. And then the critical stakeholder is ICANN, and then the ICANN's decision is only made by the board. So this is some sort of the composition of this process. Then maybe that may help your understanding on this. Then I tried my best to answer your question. Then this is my best.
I can also take a stab to answer. So this is where we can look at the clarifying the roles and responsibilities and whether the document says too much or too little as to what those roles should be. Some elements of your question, such as, for example, if the ICANN board decides to reject, for what reason, under what reasons can it do it, blah, blah, blah. I would probably think that falls under implementation more. That's in the later phase. But for now, the idea is that the ICANN bot would be that final, in a way, approver of the process. So there's been some discussion as to what does that actually mean and scenario planning for how that might occur. And I think there's some thinking around, would the ICANN bot only be looking at approving and rejecting based on has the process been adhered to? If the process has been adhered to and due diligence has been done, there is no reasonable reason to reject. But again, what is the threshold? What is the standard for which? What's the benchmark for which all this happens? I think that goes into implementation. But again, this comes back to the community. What's your feedback? What's your sense of, does this process make sense? Should ICANN be at the end of that road? Then how does it go back and forth when decisions can't be made? The governance document also does prescribe a little bit of that. What happens if there is unhappiness at the decision that it was rejected? So then the ASO came up with, oh, okay, so this came up at the questionnaire round, like, oh, there's no appeal process. If I get my proposal rejected, that's the end of the road for me, right? And so the ASO actually worked very hard to bring language into, okay, so maybe we should think about an appeals mechanism and what would that look like, et cetera, and to think through who the actors should be for that to happen. So again, I encourage you to read the governance document and to see whether or not you agree with how the process is being laid out right now.
It's already top of the hour, then we need to finish it. But before that, as Joyce said in the previous slide, the first and foremost constructive comment would be really, really appreciated. And then this is the second round of the consultation after the principal discussion was there, and then now we are phasing the finalization. So concrete specific comment is really, really welcome. With that, if you had any idea which you want to pass it to the ASO, then it's welcome. Any comment is welcome. So even if it is out of scope, that will be the food of thought about ours, then please, in that way, take a look at the document and then draft, and then please give us the feedback. Thank you very much. With that, over to you, Joyce.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you again, Joyce and Akinori. So with that, we have come to the end of the forum. Thank you very much to everyone for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.